So what we're going to do is a single watermelon that you saw previously. And we're going to get started by telling you the package that our brushes for our class came in doesn't allow for the brushes to dry on transit, leaving from class, putting them in your bag and taking them home. So I have put my extra things in here, pencils, erasers, signing pen, in here just to use it as a pencil case. There's an option. Also, when my kids and I were at Yogurtland, I kept our straws, and I have found that they are excellent as paintbrush travel containers. Originally, I had gone to the Dollar Tree and picked up this toothbrush holder, which I thought was awesome. But as you can see, even the 8 is too tall. So we couldn't use, you can use it for shorter brushes, but you won't be able to use it for the taller brushes. So with these, I put a piece of tape, and you'll get this in your video. I put a square piece of tape at the bottom, folded it over, wrapped it, took a long piece of tape, and just wrapped it, and then I wrote on it which number is each pencil. You don't need to do that, but I like to do that so I know which one I need to grab. So go ahead and get your number 6 and your number 12, our largest and our smallest in our set. In addition, for class today, I'm going to give you a 2 to use for all the fine detail of the ants and the antlers, because it has this really nice, I don't know how you're going to be able to see this. Nope, not there, huh? A nice point on it, and that's what you need for the details. Otherwise, you might get frustrated like me that it's just not showing up correctly. Also, you'll be using at the very end the Jelly Roll pen that you're receiving today. This definitely needs to be shaken like this every time you go to use it, because if you don't shake it, the paint or whatever it's made of inside there will separate. And so this way, when you draw on your paper, it just lays down a nice clean bit of white that you can use for the eyes, for highlights on the seeds. I'm going to show you how to do highlights without using that. Oh dear, look at me. I'm going to use an extra brush here because that looks like watercolor. I can't imagine, and maybe it's not. Oh dear. Well, I've started off with not a clean piece of paper, but you know what? That's okay. I will go ahead and use my clean towel and mop that up. Okay, so we're also going to be using the Dr. P.H. Martin Light Fast paints. We're going to be using the Carbon Black for the seeds and the ants. We're going to be using Sap Green for the rind of the watermelon. And we're going to be using a combination of Permanent Red and Alizarian Crimson. Unfortunately, the red has settled, so our color is probably going to be a little bit more pink than your average watermelon, but is it going to look juicy and refreshing? Okay, I have given you 2 drops of red to 4 drops of water, 1 drop of green to 1 drop of water, and 1 drop of black to 1 drop of water. You probably will not use all of your black and green, but instead of stopping in the middle of class to give you more paint, it actually is a good option. So we're going to fill the watermelon with our 12 first. So we'll put the 6 aside and let's get started. Now, I can't imagine why this is so dirty. But anyway, with your clean water, go ahead and dip your brush. Get the excess of the drippage off, because you don't want to drip on your way to your project. And then what we're going to do, we're going to do the detail up here in the teeth marks with a smaller brush. But for now, we just need to lay down some water, and you will see why in a minute. Don't worry so much about the bite marks right now, but we are going to do a wet on wet again, just like we did last time. Lay down some water. It is completely fine to go over the seeds, over the ants, over everything, because everything else is going to be black. Now, I use the reflection of the light to be able to tell where I've laid my water down and where I haven't. So you kind of have to tilt it a little bit. So we have windows in our classroom. If you want to go ahead and keep an eye on that and make sure they're tilted. Lay down a decent amount of water, but not so much that it's puddling. But you also don't want it to be too dry because our paint won't travel. Now, I've done one ahead of time and this part right here does dry, so we will be ending up putting some other color down. Now, I go backwards with my brush when I see a piece of lint, and I wipe it where I'm not going to be wiping my paintbrush again. Go ahead and take your smaller brush, get some red paint on it. We're gonna do the teeth marks first. Go ahead and mix in the water with your paint. You don't need to lay down more water. And then we'll go ahead and do the detail. I like a nice clean edge on my watermelon. Actually, I like a nice clean edge on a lot of things, but because I just like that, the idea that it was freshly cut. So if you don't put your first coat of water, if you don't put it up right on the edge, you can get a much cleaner line, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit feathered, like you saw the paint just do its little travel feather thing it just did. I told you I don't talk well and teach on these. Sorry about that. And then go ahead and make the teeth mark how you want. You don't even have to draw those out ahead of time. Like the drawing I gave you, you don't have to draw those out ahead of time. It's almost easier to not, because then it doesn't get so, can you tell that there needs to be more water or paint right there? It just stopped. It just stopped flowing altogether. So I'm going to take my larger brush and I'm going to add more water in here, because obviously we need it. And I'm going to go all the way to the edges of the bottom of the seeds. So the edges of the bottom of the seeds. I am trying to keep track of what I'm saying, but I'm not very good at it. Did you see me flick that paint? That's also what can happen. So what I love about wet on wet is that tie-dye effect that I've loved since I was a little kid. There's nothing like it. It's the best. And it just travels and does its own thing. And I've gone over my line a couple times, and that's okay. I do like the top of this a little darker, because like a real watermelon, it is juicy. And then you can just kind of drop your color in, because what you want is you want those veins. I'll show you some watermelon. Now, can you tell that mine is too dry? So I'm just going to set my red down, and I'm going to put some water in the areas that are white. You don't have to get rid of all your white, but it's going to travel better. Wash, set aside, and then go ahead and tilt it down. And the reason is I want it to go away from this edge here, but we're going to actually visit that again. And then you can tell where your dry areas are. And if you would like, you can add some more water in there to get that moving a little. And then when you see, I think I got the wrong brush, go ahead and dry off one of your brushes, and you can, actually I want to keep that there. So I'm going to put this nice red deep color in the corner of these bite marks. Those little ants, this guy up here took some bites before he went traveling. Actually, he's probably supposed to be working, isn't he? And he just decided to not work and take a break. Yes, I am very particular about my bites. Now I'm going to go back down. And do you see how that flows? And it just gives it this really cool, you could even go sideways if you want to. The ultimate, the end should be a little more, there we go, kind of toward the center. And I'll show you a photograph. Now it's getting a little bit too controlled, but I'll show you a photograph of a watermelon once we finish this step and show you why we're leaving those white areas, which I probably should have shown you in the first place, but I forgot. Okay, so I'm gonna lay down a little more water. I'm also gonna take some of that puddling paint out. You just wipe off your brush and then get rid of any hard edges you might see and let that travel down. And then what we're going to do is remove some of that. I actually put bubbles in my paper, I mean in my paint. So with a dry brush, you can wick up those bubbles. There's nothing wrong with these white areas. I'm just taking them out. Okay, and then you can help this along if you would like. That is going to, that will meld together as it dries. I have seen some watermelon. Yeah, I didn't like those nice straight lines. I have seen some watermelon paintings that this is, the white ends up being, this is a little different on this side, isn't it? The white ends up being the actual color of the paper, which is really cool. So we are going to get rid of that hard edge at the bottom, but you know how watermelon can get kind of pink towards the end? Not all of it, not all kinds of watermelon do, but see how that's traveling and it's giving us kind of a neat mottled look? I actually would like it to be a little more mottled. So I'm gonna drop in some color, keep the angle going the same direction. You have, this is, we're not going to use red for anything else, so go ahead and use up your red if you'd like to. And just lay that in there and let that flow. And it's going to do those cool, oh, I love that, those blooms. And that's going to give the illusion, now I don't like how I can see my dots. I'm actually doing this very differently than the one I had planned because I'm doing this last minute, finding out we need to really be cleaned up after class. We're having a fire drill. Don't tell anybody. Should be a drill. Okay. I think that's great. I'm going to keep, dry off your brush. I'm going to keep taking out these little bubbles. I think that means I'm working too fast. Not sure. All right, now before my hard edge stays hard, whew, let's see if we can catch this. Ooh, did you see that water drop? That's because I got a little sloppy and did not check. Actually, I just didn't wipe it off before I left my glass. Now, this pink is going too far down, further down than I wanted. I'm gonna go, oopsie, almost left that water, didn't I? Let's see if we can make a little bit, yeah, that's good. A little bit of that go away. Now, to smooth in those colors into where the green's gonna be, don't worry about that little ant. He is going to be black, and we'll never have to worry about him. Oopsie, let's use a clean side. So what I'm doing now is I've wet this a little bit, wash in my wash water, rinse in my rinse water. And now I'm re-wetting it because what can happen, because I'm really unhappy that I have this hard edge right here, it's hard to paint and talk and get your painting to do what you want it to do. So let that be a lesson to you. Be quiet in class. So, sorry. If you wet it, a lot of times you can sop that color right back up. We're not going to worry too much about that. So here's your modeled watermelon. Now, oh, where's my original? You can tell how differently it's going to turn out every time. I love the white in this one of the project we were going to do, and I love this section right here, and it just dries. It's going to dry so differently. But what I want to show you is, before we get to the seeds, I jumped ahead. Seeds can be cut and sliced, and you can see some uniformity to them, some, there's a word for that. Or you can slice your watermelon and they're just kind of sporadic. What's interesting about these is because they're pushed in and cut, and they look like they're different sizes, but they're actually just different angles. So decide what you want, and you don't have to have any rhyme or reason to any of it. You can just put it how you want. And here are the white veins that this cool model look kind of represents. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get our clean little brush, get that extra water off, and we're going to use it, wipe off your extra water. I think there's a little pink on there. Let's make sure there's no pink. That's very interesting. Oh, there we go, no pink. Okay. Now we're going to mix in the green, mix your water, mix your paint. Get a nice edge, and being careful not to touch the pink part. We're going to just do the hard edge. Now, I might actually end up flipping this a different way because, ooh, little tiny hair. Because I just don't want to put my hand on my paint. Two things happen. See, I can't talk and paint. Two things happen when you follow the line you've drawn. You know what, I'm not going to worry about going into his head because I really want that angle correct, that arch. When you follow the line, now my edge is getting too hard edge, but when you follow this line, then you cover up your pencil mark, and that's a really good thing. Now, I'm going to wash, rinse, leave a little water on here because now, right at the edge, we're going to just touch it ever so slightly, and we're going to let it bloom toward the watermelon to give it an interesting color. Now, I really like that. What I would like to see though on mine is that nice sharp edge at the bottom. So the way you get that is you just drop ... some color in and hold it at an angle, and that way the color has separated right there. That way the color tends to go to the bottom due to gravity, and it'll give you a nice clean crisp hard edge. this is separating right in here, and what I think is I may have touched that with my hand. Another reason to stay away from touching your paper, because your color will tend to not adhere to it. So I'm just wiping, because I don't want that much, I don't want too much rind traveling into my pink. It's not a big deal. It really isn't. And I'm gonna try and cover, I don't know why this is blue right there. It just is. And then I will give it another swipe and let it naturally come on over. I'm gonna encourage this too. Once I draw that little ant, those colors will go away. Anywho, so this is our watermelon. That's because I waited too long to do that edge. So now what we're going to do is paint in our ants, because our watermelon needs to dry before we can drop in some black color. The ants are going to take a tedious amount of time because they're tedious. But I just thought they were so fun. I'm rinsing off my brushes. Make sure I don't forget that. I just thought they were so fun and just gave so much life to this idea that I got from somebody else. I'm trying to find her name again. I altered her drawing to make it so it was a little simpler for us. Anyway, I reference her name in the other video, the longer video. So what we're going to do is take that little brush that you have to use for today, and we're going to mix in the black with the water, and then hopefully you can see this. If you travel your brush like this to make it flat on one side, that allows you to use the flat edge that you probably can't see on here, but that allows you to use that flat edge. Oh dear. You know how you have an angle that you like to, let's see, use, these aren't gonna work. Here's a good one. Go ahead, you can go on the head too, and don't be afraid to not follow your pencil mark, because you can erase that later. You can't erase it once the paint's laid down, but you can erase that later. So I'm gonna scoot this out of the way because I'm gonna be twisting and turning all over the place. So follow your antenna how you want. That's what they're called, right? And see, I'm trying not to touch my paper. Trying really hard only to use the very tip. Did you see how skinny that got right there? And then I went over it and I got it fat again. Oh well, that's okay. I like to do those first because I can see how light or dark they're going to be. Now, you can paint in the whole face. It will save you time if you'd like to. I like to have my highlights be the paper. I'm not really a fan of coming in later and adding color. But the thing about adding color is, or adding your eye in later, is it's going to be exactly where you want. So I've left a spot for an eye, but I can also come in later and use the Jelly Roll pen. So what? When you do that, it becomes multimedia. Does that matter to anybody? It doesn't matter to me. I am not a full-on purist when it comes to choosing or not choosing. I'm going over this again because I want them closer to the same size. Okay. Oh dear, do you know what we forgot to do? We're gonna have to do that now because it needs time to dry. So go ahead and set down your black brush, get your smaller 6 that's nice and clean because you just cleaned it all up, and I told you weren't gonna use your red for anything else, but you are. And go ahead and follow the outline, or if you didn't do this part, just do a little, make your little piece of watermelon that the ant is munching on, just make it look kind of sporadic. So he has stolen this little bite. I mean, he's up here eating and not doing his work while these two, this poor guy's falling. Anyway, and this guy is carrying the weight of everything. So now I'm going to wipe off my paintbrush, wash, rinse, make sure it's clean, and set it aside. Let's go back to the black. So I'm just going to avoid all the areas that look like they're wet. This one's going to be wet for a very long time, so we won't be doing his cute little arms for a while. Now this guy, see, I can't talk and paint. Start painting inside your line. And what this allows you to do is go over the line again on the outside if you get it all fudgy. Did you see how fudgy I got mine? It was all like, Oh, I thought of another thing we could do while we wait for the red to dry. We will do that next. So I'm going sort of inside my line, but see how I'm looking at that going, I don't really like that shape. So I'm going to go back around just ever so carefully and give him a little roundness. Now I'm going to go make my brush flat, and I'm going to give him some legs. This poor guy. Maybe the guy down there carrying it got going so fast. This guy lost his balance. I don't know. And again, I'm not sure if ants have feet, but it just kind of helps for that directional. I've fallen off. Now that I've misaligned or gone outside my lines of that little ant's legs, I'm thinking, are they hairy? Do they have little fibrous things coming off of them? I don't know. That would be a good thing to look up. I don't know. And I'm just going to leave that alone, and we're going to come back to it. So we're also going to come back to his legs. But in the meantime, I do want his. When I drew his face, I realized I drew him round and not angled like those guys. So it looks like they kind of have a nose. I have no idea what shape an ant is. But when I saw that he looked round, I kind of imagined him looking at us like, what? Or, oh my gosh, help me. This is so heavy. So I gave him eyes looking forward. And if you just do the outline, you can keep working that. Now see how, oops. See how we're just going to go over the green of the watermelon, or red if yours is red right there. There we go. Okay. How many of you are singing ant songs? So in my head, I keep singing, I keep having these ant songs pop in my head, and I don't know what's legal and not legal to sing or play on YouTube. So this little ant, I changed subject, is kind of bumpy. So he's bumpy, whatever. Anyway, I don't know if I can sing certain songs or even mention them, so I'm just not. Let's go back to them. Okay, so we're going to wipe off. No, we're not. We're just going to set it aside because we're going to use it in a minute. And if you just wet it, it reconstitutes. Totally cool. Okay. Go ahead and use, this part doesn't even matter. You can use your big brush or little brush. I think I'm going to use my little brush. And that's because I like the little things I'm going to show you. So I'm going to start kind of, my idea is in keeping with this, I don't want my grass to go much further that way and much further that way. And the only reason is I like the whiteness. I like it being framed by white. And if I frame it in a little frame, then my painting's still kind of floating. But you could go all the way to the edge if you prefer that. And it's just a matter of preference. So I'm going to do this up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Kind of, who knows? I'm just scribbling. Do you know what I mean? I'm just scribbling at this point. I have no idea what this is going to look like. I can't see it. I probably should have put a tiny bit of green on there, right? Then I'm going to go over here, mix up my green, and I'm going to drop it in. And I'm just going to dot along the straight line to see what happens. And it should, even though it's not right there, it should do that cool little, what is that called? Bloom. I love that. I just love when paint blooms. Okay. Now I'm kind of dashing under it to create, I don't know, some interest in leaving some white here and there. I just saw it happen on the other side, and I thought, ooh, I think I want to keep some of that. So I am. You can do whatever you want. Now, I'm going to put a little more in here. Then I'm going to get some water, and it's okay that it's green because now I'm going to a little more quickly. Do you see how it's flowing to me? I'm going to rinse it, and I'm going to just do this flighty kind of whatever haphazard thing. I'm going to add more water, and I'm going to let mine just kind of do its thing to the bottom. And if you tilt it again, all that paint is going to go down, and then it may just turn to clear on its own. I don't know. I actually don't know what kind of ending I want here, what kind of edge. So suppose you could, you could just feather that out as well. It'll just have the ever so slightest tint of green, barely any green, but it might give it some interest. So there we go. And that's the grass. Now if you want it darker, here's another thing you can do. Let me show you another tip. So it's kind of puddling at the bottom. If you just rest this, touch it to another object, another absorbent object, it'll mop it up for you. Now, if you want, I don't have any drippage, but just in case, I'm going to go ahead and lightly sop that up, because if you want to, you can take what little is left of your green and maybe, I had a drop on my brush, like on my brush handle. Not good. I'm really glad I saw that. And you can just add some definition. It's really good to have a little more contrast, a little more layers of color. I kind of like what just happened there. Maybe I just want to scribble. Do you want to scribble? I'm not very good at scribbling because I'm so, I like things to be where I want them to be. So I'm actually going to scribble in some water because now I don't like it. It doesn't mean it's not good, you can do it. You can do what you like. Again, that's the joy of painting and creating. If you like it and you're happy with it, that really is what matters most. It really is. I'm just teaching you some techniques, teaching you some different ways to do things, giving you ideas, and then you get to take that and do what you want with it. I think I'm going to stop there. Yeah, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to sop that up and let that do what it wants right there. Okay, so that is what it is. And then we'll get back to, I've got a little puddle right here. Sorry. Yep. And of course I'm doing that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a clean section of my washcloth, and I'm actually going to do it along the bottom. There, I'm happy with that. I can see the blues and yellows and greens that are made up in this color, in this sap green color. Okay, now I'm going to finish rinsing my green, set that aside, go back to my black, because now things have dried more. I can see where it's wet. If you just hold it up to the light and see where it's glistening, it's wet. It doesn't mean if it's not glistening, it's not wet, because this can still be damp. If I touch it, which I kind of don't want to, yeah, it's still cold. So that means it's still wet to me. But because we started up here on our watercolor and worked our way down, it's safe to assume this is the wettest part. So I'll go up here and I will take a risk at trying this, and if it doesn't bleed, it's dry. I really couldn't figure out how to make it look like an ant was sitting. So hopefully this looks like a sitting ant. Well, wouldn't you know, I can't get it to do what I want it to do. Because it's watercolor. No, it's because I have a paintbrush that doesn't want to stay in a tip. There we go. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to drop in some extra black because I could see through it. I could see the red. I'm going to give myself a sharp edge again. I'm going to give myself, my little guy, a thigh. A little foot. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the arms before the elbow and the hand, because I don't want the black to go in there and I can see that it's still wet. So we'll stay away from that. And then hopefully the angles chosen here will make it look like this little guy is falling off. But you can do whatever you want. You want to make your guy climbing on it, he's still on it, you can make him doing that. This is just an idea, a suggestion. If we have time this class, maybe we can do like a freeform style of watercolor. Why not? We'll do one of those. If we have time. I'm the teacher, right? I'll make the time. That's what we'll do. We'll do, I am taking a risk here. But that's not a ton of green, so it's not going to bleed because it's dry. This poor guy, he's working hard to hold this thing up. I wish I could zoom in and show you how just the tip of the brush I'm using. It's just barely the tip. Yep, that is still wet. So what we can do now, nope, it's still wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk away. I'm going to come back and we'll finish the seeds in a little bit. So, all right, looks like it's about dry. This guy is still a little wet, but we're okay. Okay, this is a tedious part. All I'm going to be doing is filling in all the various seeds. Now, I've drawn mine out ahead for the purpose of not having to think while I'm painting about where to put them as I'm teaching, instructing, whatever. Now, what I want to show you is I left a little highlight right there. Now, it's a pink highlight, but again, with our gel pen, if we come in with that jelly roll, this is one of the best milky pens as far as being opaque. I highly recommend it, which is why that is the one we bought for our class. If you have another one you like better, you can try it. Just make sure you shake it up. Doesn't matter where the highlight is, it just depends on where the light is hitting it, where it's going to end up. So, I mean, unless we were doing a directional painting, do you know what I mean? If there was a direction of the sun, let's say the sun's just kind of behind us, and if that's sticking out of the watermelon more than another side, then that's what's going to be highlighted. Maybe we could do a light steady watercolor. See, this one's already getting gray, but what's cool about that is when the seeds are within the watermelon, they're not as black as the seed is when you spit it out. Get it in your mouth and spit it out. So, so we will leave that cool gray color. I'm so excited to see how you guys choose to do your seeds. Sporadically, more linear, more symmetrical. That's the word I was looking for earlier, was the word symmetrical. I mean, they're not completely symmetrical, but so much of God's design in nature is 100% symmetrical and has like totally cool patterns. If Dave was here, I could ask what that like the nautilus shell, what is that called, that shape that you see in succulents, that you see in flowers? I don't know what that's called, and I should. I just appreciate it. You can appreciate things without knowing technical terms or mathematical terms for them, right? Sometimes you just know something's beautiful and you don't know why. It just is. Ooh, that might be the first one I put a little highlight on the top. Okay, that's it. That's literally it. If you want to go back in, drop some color, especially this one that you know is popping out. That's not gray. Maybe you want to add some color. It's easier to add a little more color while it's still wet, because the color will travel and stay more black. And then this little guy I did first, I just want to round him up. Oh, okay, I like that. Have I forgotten anything? Yes, his little hands. Is he dry? Is that watermelon dry yet? I just don't think so. I'm nervous about putting little arms on him. Should I try it? Oh dear. Okay, well. Oh my gosh, are you holding your breath? I am. I did it. I really wanted to finish this project for you guys today. So there it is. There is our, what should we call this? Watermelon ant party. That sounds good. I like it. A watermelon ant party. This one might be regretting it. I don't know. This one too. This one's having a party. Anyway, I hope you like this project. Let me know if you have any suggestions or questions, and enjoy.